All right, you are listening to or watching PH2T3R Pater, the Journal of Solar Culture. And I'm here as always with my co-host, CB Robertson, author of many fine books. You know, I've been doing that introduction for long enough that I don't actually even have to think about it anymore. This must be what like hosting a real talk show is like. You know, it just, that's what we go. But so right now we are reading through the Odyssey. We're doing it in part for our audience and also in part for like present and future members of the Order of Fire's First Men, because they're assigned to read the Odyssey. And so this is kind of our study guide, as well as some infotainment for all of you. But this is when you're watching Game of Thrones, and there's there's 2 or 3 episodes where like it's all like build up and nothing really happens. Like there's no dragons, there's nothing like it. It's kind of like that. That's where we're at in these 8 chapters here. If I would have had to edit Homer, I would have said maybe 4. But like we could have condensed those down a little bit. But far be it for me to edit Homer. But we have these eight chapters here, and so we went through them, and right now we're doing from 17 to 20. And this is where it leads up to the final conclusion of the Odyssey. So do you want to go through your bit by bit? And we'll make this one short so people who are following along, they don't have to watch 3 hours of podcast.
The summary of all 8 of these chapters is just one long string of dramatic irony. It's just a whole lot of everyone talking about Odysseus to Odysseus without knowing that they're talking to Odysseus. And there's some interesting wordplay going on with the names there. So basically we start at Eumaeus's hut. Telemachus is going to town. Eumaeus and Odysseus kind of follow behind him. And Telemachus gets to the palace. He's greeted by Penelope, and she's all like, "Oh my God, I was so worried about you." And he basically says, "Don't worry about me, wash up, act normal," basically. And he very much assumes command in that way that we saw him in his first transformation in book 1. So again, after this reunification with his father. So kind of interesting dynamic going on there. But Eumaeus and Odysseus don't make it to the palace quite so smoothly. They are... they're greeted on the road by is my order correct that they greeted by the other beggar first, or are they greeted by the goat herd?
I think it's a goat herd.
The goat herd.
Yeah, it's like and he basically is just talking shit to them. Yeah.
Yeah, and he like kicks Odysseus on the road too. Everyone's just this is all just abusing Odysseus is the theme of these 4 chapters, who's again disguised as an old man and as a beggar. And Eumaeus is like, how dare you do this? If Odysseus was back in town, again in front of Odysseus here, he'd have you kicked out, and you're a crappy goat herd anyways. And the goat herd's like, "How dare you insult my? I hope he never comes back, and I hope you get sold off to slavery." And then they kind of part ways. It's this building sense that nothing is working right when the king is away.
Right.
It is what this is sort of thematically indicative of. And we see more of this when we get to the palace. So they continue on their way. They get to the palace, and they're greeted by these suitors who really are, how do I put this? They're like annoyed that there's another mooch to compete with their mooching. Is sort of the tone going on there. And Tinuus in particular has a lot of mean things to say. And there are some interesting repetitive lines, like you hear this phrase like a beggar should not be shamefaced, which is a strange repeated line that you hear at least in some translations. But Odysseus is going around asking for gifts basically from the suitors, and they a few of them give him things, but they're mostly berating him and abusing him, and Tinuus in particular. And one of the suitors says, like, shouldn't we be careful here? Like, don't the gods sometimes go around in disguise in order to test people in this way? And it's an interesting invocation, because what Odysseus is doing was essentially testing them. And he's not just testing them, he's testing everybody. Everybody he's going around, he comes up with fables about who he is and where he's coming from in order to be able to observe, well, what exactly am I walking into? What's the context? Like, what are these people's natures when they don't know who I am, in order to test them? And he's almost taking on the role of a god in the way that he is testing them. But critically, he's not a god in his power to decide, because there is one suitor that he wishes to save, and indeed attempts to save, by giving portents of destruction. That this one suitor, what was his name? Amphinomus, I think. I remember it because his name has a particular meaning. I think it was Amphinomus. But his name means basically grazing all around, which is sort of a throwback to the cattle of the sun in some ways. This crime of overstaying your welcome, of taking what is not yours, what does not belong to you, especially what is above your station. And what all of these suitors are is would-be usurpers to the king and overturners of the correct hierarchy, of the correct order of things, which is why the kingdom is not functioning properly. So anyways, this Amphinomus is generous and kind to Odysseus in his disguise. And Odysseus is very gracious and compliments him on his lineage and on his behavior, and says, hey, you should really get out of here. I sense that bad things are coming. You might not want to be around here. You should really get out. But he doesn't have the power to save him, just as he didn't have the power to save his own comrades, as we learned in, the very opening lines. Their own reckless ways destroy them. They devoured the cattle of the sun. And in his own way, Amphinomus, devoured the cattle of Odysseus. So Athena decided that he was not going to survive, and she sort of fated him to die at Telemachus's hand. But that's not yet. We're seeing all this foreshadowing. There's so much foreshadowing. So there's a little bit of an altercation between Antinous, who throws a stool at Odysseus, and there's a neat description of how he describes him hucking the stool and hitting him across the right shoulder blade, but it doesn't move him. He just stands there and takes it without it even pushing him. So you get a sense of the weight of this strange character, this new character in the hall that is off-putting to a lot of people. And everyone is very upset by this. Everyone is very upset that Antinous threw a stool. People are beginning to get a sense that, are we the baddies? Like, there's this growing sense of unease that many of the suitors are beginning to feel.
Yeah.
But
I've cast. I didn't realize until I was reading these chapters that I had cast this in my head. There was casting done.
Okay.
For the actors. I basically just recast 300. Basically, Odysseus has more or less been, the guy who played, I forget his name right now, the guy who played, the main dude in 300, and the
Butler.
Yeah, Jared Butler.
Yeah.
And whoever the dude is who played the sleazy guy who was trying to fuck his wife in the background or whatever, that's Antinous. That I have him pegged as I didn't realize it until I was reading Antinous and picturing that guy in my face, and I'm like that guy's face in my mind. I'm like, well, that about fits. That's pretty close. Yeah, the character of that guy,
So I guess us going through the Odyssey is very fortuitous for people who are following current cinema, because they actually just put out trailers for a new Odyssey movie. The casting for Odysseus is Ralph Fiennes, of all people.
Ray Fiennes is how you're supposed to say. Yeah, it's weird. I don't know. I'm
Weird.
pretty sure
Okay.
it's you say it weird. The English.
Interesting. It's
But
Voldemort / Dollarhide. So,
right. Yes.
yeah, it'll be. I think that's brilliant casting, but we'll see how it works out. So, anyways, then we get to Jack's favorite part, the bum fight. Because so after Odysseus sort of has his words about the uncharitable treatment of Antinous towards him. And here we're really re-invoking the theme of Xenia again. He's testing their Xenia. How generous are they? And his criticism of Antinous is, it's easy to be generous with other people's stuff.
Right.
You aren't even generous with other people's stuff. You don't even give me bread that isn't yours. So
he's a perfect socialist.
Yeah, basically. So he and of course the dramatic irony here is Odysseus is asking. He's saying, like, you won't even give me my bread. You don't realize is mine.
Right.
But anyway, so he departs, and as Eumaeus is going off back to his farm, and he's going out front, and he is confronted by another beggar. I don't remember his name. What was his name? It was he had a nickname of Iris because he was always doing other people's bidding. I don't remember his real name, which they mentioned Arrhenius or something. I don't know. But Iris, who is this like very big guy and kind of an intimidating guy, but is actually kind of a coward and not very tough. But he's very braggadocious, and he's like, again, beggar seeing another beggar, saying, there ain't enough room in this town for the two of us. You get you out of here, basically. And
they fight over a stoop, right? Like they're sitting they're fighting over a stoop, which is fucking ghetto as fuck.
Yeah, and basically Odysseus says, no, you can't talk to me that way. And so one of the suitors overhears them, and he gets all the others. They're like, hey guys, check this out. And they all come out, and there was a possibility that maybe this fight wasn't going to happen, that they were just going to talk or whatever. But then the suitors get involved. Like, no. We're going to give you prizes. Whichever one of you wins gets a freaking like a lamb's bag of fat and blood, which I guess is a very nutritious and tasty meal in those days. So they offer a prize to whoever wins this fight, and Odysseus just kind of crushes him. It's not really much of a fight. Iris.
But he thinks about it beforehand. He's like, I shouldn't just knock him unconscious. I should just like pop him a little bit and lay him out.
Yeah, he pulls his punch a little bit, and it's this. I forget the Greek word for it. There's a word that some scholars use to describe this going this way and that way in thinking about weighing his options before he makes a decision, which is this classic Odysseus move that keeps coming up in his ordeals. He's like, I could do this or I could do that, and then he makes a decision and goes through with it. And that's sort of, we see that once again with this fight, pulling his punch a little bit, just as he held himself back a little bit when speaking with Nausicaa. And we'll see a little bit more of that in the upcoming chapters too, and how he presents himself to Penelope and to other people. So so he wins his bum fight.
I love this because it feels very real. Mm-hmm. I mean, because who are these guys? These suitors are hanging around. They're a bunch of frat boys, basically. Like they're a bunch of dudes who are just dudes who are hanging out and partying, and they're all younger guys, I think, mostly. I mean, I get the sense that would be the case. But and they're being rowdy and they're being jerks. And this dude, these homeless people come in, and that's what you can totally see that actually happening with a bunch of guys like that. They're like, no, wait, okay, all right, we'll get in a fight. This is gonna be hilarious. And like, I mean, you can just see bro is like, that is a total bro move. To like, let's create a bum fight here in the palace so that we can all fucking laugh at it. It's a total frat boy move. So it's just kind of funny that it feels very, very real.
Yeah, it's and this is for me one of the things that makes Homer so enjoyable to read is that there'll be these passages that are so epic, literally, and mythic and distant. They feel so foreign to modern ears. And it will be juxtaposed with lines of dialogue or little things that happen that feel so resonant and real and familiar to us. It's this crazy juxtaposition of, you know, epic faraway ancient Greece and like, I saw that downtown last week. You know,
yeah.
That creates it's a fascinating experience. So, anyways, after he wins his fight and he gets his like congratulations from these suitors that were, insulting him before because he entertained them now. Penelope sort of presents herself to the suitors, and she decides, I mean, she's heard from Telemachus now that Odysseus is alive and is, I should mention, she is told by Telemachus that Odysseus is alive and on the sea. He had some ordeal, but he's out there somewhere sailing. And then one of the other guys from Sparta says, listen, Penelope, Telemachus is kind of new to this whole thing. He doesn't know what's going on. Odysseus is here. He's somewhere on this island right now, basically. Which is like dramatic irony upon dramatic irony because he doesn't know that Telemachus literally met him and was planning with him. So there's just layers upon layers of dramatic irony in here. But so she knows he's alive though, or she's heard confirmation from multiple sources now that Odysseus is alive and around. So now she is presenting herself to the suitors as if she has decided that she's going to marry one of them. And she in a move that mirrors her husband's cunning, she manages to get them all to give her gifts first. And apparently Odysseus is watching this and he's like, oh, well done. You know, he's applauding his wife's cleverness and tricking more gifts out of them. So like everyone is trying to mooch off each other in a weird way. But she basically says that she's decided that she's going to choose one of them to marry. Was it at this point that she makes the challenge, or was that in? I'm getting my timeline mixed up. I think the archery challenge comes later.
It's right around here. It happens in this section of 4 books. It happens because she mentions it that's what they're going to do, and it sounds like a great idea.
Yes, exactly. But between then and the next day, because Penelope, when she heard about this strange beggar having a stool thrown at him, she feels very bad about it and wants to talk to this stranger. But she also heard that he knew something about Odysseus, that he had traveled with him at some point. So she wants to talk to Odysseus, and she arranges to talk with him. Odysseus doesn't want to come to her immediately because he doesn't want to draw undue suspicion. But he goes to her later in the night, and she comes down and asks him questions, and he gives, still in his disguise, not revealing himself, to his own wife, who he's speaking to for the first time in 20 years. Just kind of extraordinary when you think about it. But he describes Odysseus so clearly and so accurately to her, because she's testing him. Like, do you really know my husband? And he passes her test. He describes it himself perfectly. And she's like, oh my gosh, it must be true. And she's sobbing with relief that her husband is alive, or at least known again. He, in exchange, she offers him a bed and new shirts and clothes and food and stuff. He turns down the bed. Interestingly, he says he prefers to sleep on the floor, but he very begrudgingly allows the nursemaid Eurycleia, who we met in the early books in conversations with Telemachus, to wash his feet, which was a bit of a mistake because Eurycleia knew Odysseus as well as anybody. And so as she's washing his feet, she sees this scar that he got from a boar hunt when he was young, and she recognizes him from the scar. And he says, don't say anything. He basically silences her, says, you're not allowed to say anything about this. I need to remain disguised. And so it's more tension building as people begin to, and I think I might have mentioned this in our last conversation about the Odyssey. There's this theme of recognition that we see, the ability of characters to recognize or not recognize other characters, places of land, like Odysseus didn't recognize his own home when he first got there. All these other people are not recognizing him, except another character, which I haven't mentioned, but who emerges in this section, and that's the dog Argo, who he sees kind of from across the way, and who sees him as the only character who sees Odysseus and recognizes him through his disguise at first glance, and then promptly dies. Just waited 20 years to see his master, and then wags his tail and then dies. So that's a kind of tragic moment. But anyways, Eurycleia recognizes Odysseus by the scar, by the sign. And so there's, I think, something, I mean, it's obviously an important point in the story because it's building more tension, but it's also thematically significant with this theme of recognition or the failure to recognize. And the recognition is sort of symbolic of the mental connection that they have. And if we go back to book one, this word nepioi that was used to describe the comrades whose recklessness destroyed them. Mm-hmm. We see this theme with the suitors as they are told repeatedly by like a dozen different people, like, hey guys, I think we're screwing up. Hey guys, I think there's bad signs all around. There's bad signs everywhere. There's bad omens from the sky. At one point, like Telemachus's sneeze is interpreted as a sign that they're all going to die. There's all kinds of signs that they're in serious trouble, and they fail to recognize the signs. Mm-hmm. They just cannot see them. And so I think that there's a connection between the mental connection that is nous, which Odysseus has and brings to other people as well, and Antinous, anti-nous, being the chief among these suitors, these nepioi who can't recognize things, and the destruction that follows from that. They don't recognize who their superiors are. They don't recognize what they should and should not touch. So anyways, that's probably enough of that. And then in book 19, we get they do the disarmament plan that they'd come up with, as we were discussing before, when they were still out in Eumaeus's hut. They take away all the weapons. They sort of prepare the scene for the carnage. And then I think it was in this section that they present that Penelope comes out and presents the archery challenge, correct?
I think so. Yeah.
They remove the weapons, and then it's basically just more banquet hall banter, essentially.
Yeah.
There's more conversation there. There's more insult. There's more. The correct word is hubris. There's more hubris. as more arrogance and overstepping the correct boundaries of Xenia. This time, not in terms of host to guest, but guest to host. These guests are not behaving well. But curiously, the guests are when a beggar comes in, the guests strangely kind of become the hosts in a strange way. So that they're bad guests and they're bad hosts at the same time, which is sort of a curious, complete embodiment of everything bad by this standard. And another fun little thematic detail is that, Athena was apparently worried that Odysseus might not be mad enough. So Athena goes out of her way to cause some of the suitors to insult him beyond maybe what they might have already done, in order to make sure Odysseus is like not just angry, but like murderously angry.
Right.
And that's basically where we leave off, more or less.
Well, the last chapter, the 20 there, is more or less just kind of dream stuff, like while Odysseus is asleep, and also the gods kind of talking amongst each other about things, and then about what's going to happen, and so forth, and then Odysseus actually prays for a sign, and then Zeus sends him
thunderclap. Yeah.
So that which is rad.
And as far as signs from God go too, it's in this section also that the suitors are told, I think finally, it's the last warning. They're told by a seer of sorts that the walls are covered with blood and that all of their faces look ghostly. And they're told this by a seer named Theoclymenus, which means one who hears from God. So it's another one of those like kind of on the nose name symbol things. Like they don't listen to human seers, and they also don't listen to the gods. They're impious, and their failure to fulfill the obligations of Xenia are symptomatic of their impiety and their disconnection in general. So their fate is sealed essentially in this chapter, but we don't get to see that just yet. We're still left on a bit of a cliffhanger. But yeah, that was it's a lot of buildup. It's a lot of showing these 4 chapters are really demonstrating how far into disarray the palace and the kingdom have fallen in the absence of the king, and all of the disconnected hubris and overstepping one's proper post and boundaries of these would-be usurpers, of these would-be suitors who want to be king themselves.
Yeah, and it's obviously like from a solar idealist perspective, there's like an absence of leadership, like there's an absence of a center, and that's what all this disarray is happening because there's no order, basically. That's what's falling apart.
To the degree that the suitors have a leader, it's Antinous, but his identity is anti. His identity is negation. And I mean, it's embodied in his plan to kill Telemachus, because he's sort of the architect of that failed idea, which doesn't work because the gods don't like him.
Well, why would they? He's a dick.
Yeah. He hasn't done anything. He doesn't have any virtues really to speak of. I guess he's considered to be a halfway decent speaker, but I mean he's not that excellent in that regard. There are better speakers that we run into, Odysseus chiefly among them. So yeah, and these are all guys who, I mean, they're probably too young, but who didn't go to war. They didn't. They didn't. They're the audacious what's the right word? Audacious, I guess is the right word. Young men who are speaking up to their superiors who they don't realize are their superiors.
Right.
And the whole theme, I guess what we're seeing here is a sort of theological explanation of the idea of Xenia, of the justification of Xenia and being a good host to strangers, because you are not to treat as inferiors your people who are your equals or your superiors. You have to treat people according to their station, according to the divine hierarchy. But if you don't know who someone is, you kind of have to assume that they're at least decent, or else you might risk offending the gods. Right. So there's a sort of theological revelation of the purpose of Xenia here. There's like, other people can bring up practical sort of economic, like, societies that treat strangers better will have better trade, and you can come up with materialistic explanations for why Xenia would make sense. And those might also be true, but those aren't really the reasons that Homer is concerned with in talking about these obligations.
Right. I mean, it's just basically, don't be a dick. Don't be shitty.
It's not that hard.
Like, until they give you a reason to be shitty, don't be shitty to people. Is basically what they're saying the gods hate. Like, don't be shitty to people for no reason. If they do something to offend you, that's one thing. But if they're just like, living life, like there's, you don't have to go after them. But
where it gets complicated is that we see in Homer cases of people who are loved by the gods doing some kind of shitty things and getting away with it. We see.
Well, we talked about it earlier. Is obviously being a pirate's kind of shitty.
Yeah,
which is obviously
cities, taking booty. In the monetary or the more biological sense. There's Odysseus is not a morally good character. He's not morally bad. He's like, his excellence is apart from morality. But for all the crappy things that he does still fulfill the Xenia obligations reasonably well. So it's a foreign notion of ethics, I think, to people who live in the modern world. But there's glimpses of the familiar, and like, don't be a dick is a pretty good sort of modern translation of Xenia into more contemporary good advice.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hateful towards people for a lot of reasons, like just generally, but I'll still open the door for them. Yeah. It's just stuff like that. I mean, it's just like basic social, this is what we do until there's a direct reason. It's like whether someone's like, wearing a mask, or like I have to smile at the lady at the post office who's wearing a mask, and it bugs me, but she's very polite and happy. Like, while we do it, I'm like, okay, well, I secretly hate you, but we don't have to like get into that right now. Because you see, you're being nice, I'm being nice, we'll be nice. Exactly. And then that's why people, I think, if humans didn't behave that way most of the time, they'd have a bad time. Like, society really wouldn't work. Yeah,
There's an excellent lecture series by behavioral biologist Robert Sapolsky from Stanford University, who one of the things he talks about and brings up in a variety of different places is the extraordinary unnaturalness of the fact that you can bring 30 to 40 to 50 human beings into a room and no one gets killed. 30 to 40 human beings who are strangers, who don't know each other, put them in a room together. That is not reproducible in any other primate, probably not any other mammal, to bring wild animals that are strangers, that are not from the same tribe as you do in the classroom. So our social codes and norms that we've built up through culture have accomplished an extraordinary amount in our ability to connect with each other, to trade, to build things, to do things. And Athena, if our sort of exploration of the nature of Athena last section that we went over is correct, that she's a civilizing force, then her enforcement as the sort of direct child of Zeus, the god of Xenia, what she is enforcing is a code of civility that builds upon and expands this nous, this mental connection that creates order, that creates connection through the minds of other people, and what the transformative power of that connection at the level of the individual as well as at the level of the kingdom. And that's not explicit. It's conveyed in this very kind of dreamlike epic depiction given to us in poetic form by the rhapsode. But thematically, that seems to be what's going on. Before the civilizing force murders the 108 uncivilized characters, plus a few others.
Yeah. Well, they had it coming. They were shitty. That's basically they were shitty, and so they have it coming. But cool. All right. Well, we'll wrap this up from this portion of the read through, and then next week, I believe you're going to finish wrapping it up, and then have a general conversation about Homer. I'm going to be in Tasmania. And I don't even know what day it will be when I'm there because of the time difference and everything. It might be the middle of the day on like Friday when you guys are doing the live show. But I'll be out with the Order Fire's First Men group out there, and we're going to do a ritual on Saturday Saturday of next week out in Tasmania, and go for some hikes with Josh Wood. And we have some cool stuff happening out there. It's going to be really fun. But Chris here is going to run the podcast. I'm going to show him how to do the back end of it. And then he and Mark from the Order Fire's First Men, who's one of our main guys, who's really smart, and they've been working with he's been working with Chris in his Homer group. So they're going to talk advanced Homer stuff as well as kind of wrapping up the end of this book, so we can move on to new things after that. But anyway, that's the show for this week. I didn't want to drag it on too long because it's, like all foreshadowing. And for the study guide for later, so someone will actually watch it. And it's Thanksgiving on Thursday, which is why we're recording this ahead of time. And so no one will actually watch us live. We know that. And so like, but the shirts, the adventure shirts, I'm just going to plug those real quick because I am going to shut the store down on Sunday because I won't be able to ship orders while I'm in Tasmania. And a lot of the sites actually want you to ship it in 2 days. So I don't want to get dinged because of that. So I'm going to shut the stores down. So if you want a shirt for Christmas season, I'm going to be in Tasmania the first week of December. So I'm going to try and ship out I'm going to ship out everywhere I get up until Sunday when I shut the store down. I'm going to drop it off on my way to the airport on Monday. So everything that comes out, and these are doing really well. I've been admiring how cool this looks on film right now throughout the. But anyway, thank you guys for watching, and we will see you next time. Stay solar.
Stay solar.
Thank you for watching or listening to the Journal of Solar Culture. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and leave us a comment. The first volume of our journal is available in paperback and now, finally, on Kindle. Pick it up in our store or on Amazon.